Every elected Republican knows that this president is guilty of countless impeachable offenses. But they, along with many white evangelicals and white supremacists, have made a pact with Putin. But unlike a pact with the devil, this one can be unsigned. Hey folks, I am Just a Dude and welcome to the I Am Just a Dude video channel. Today we're going to talk about the person who created this tweet, as irresponsible as it is, but he has a name that's quite appropriate, at least in the acting world. But before we get into that, I'd like you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, my BitChute channel, and my Brighteon channel. These are my 3 video channels. The reason I have 3 is I've heard a lot of great things about BitChute. I've heard a lot of great things about Brighteon. YouTube is still the place to be, but there's a lot of questions in the future for YouTube and its content creators. But while you're there, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click that little bell notification so every time I make an upload, you'll get to see it first. If you happen to be on Brighteon, click that little subscribe button there. And if you're so inclined and would like to support the work that I do, click that little $sign and you can contribute whatever you feel is appropriate. And it would always be greatly appreciated. Without any further ado, let's find out who this meathead is who made this tweet. It's this guy. His name is Rob Reiner. And he's the one that created this tweet because he doesn't like our President Trump. So instead of just talking about President Trump, now they're not only talking about white supremacists, which obviously Christians don't agree with, but now he's trying to lump white evangelicals, Christians, into the same mix as a white supremacist. Oh, and he's also trying to lump them in with betraying their country and doing what Putin wants. It doesn't get much more irresponsible than this, folks. Here it is. Rob Reiner, white evangelicals and white supremacists made a pact with Putin to defend Trump from impeachment. This guy really needs some help. Because like I said, he's not only attacking Trump, now he's attacking the Christian community of the United States of America. Why? Because he doesn't like our president or his policies. So, might as well just throw Christians into the mix, right? Let's read that tweet again. Every elected Republican knows that this president is guilty of countless impeachable offenses. But they, along with many white evangelicals, Christians in other words, and white supremacists, like the way he lumps us in together, have made a pact with Putin. But unlike a pact with the devil, he's getting quite spiritual here, he's talking about spiritual things, this one can be unsigned. Rob Reiner, November 30th, 2019. This guy is a menace to society and the Christian community for even actually suggesting such a thing. This is what people do when they can't win on their own merits of an argument, trying to put the blame on other groups and associations of groups. And another thing this guy said back in July, he said this: the president of the United States is a racist. Based on what? I don't know. I've never seen or heard anything that he's ever said that is actually racist. I've seen people imply things to try and make him look like he's a racist, but I've actually never heard him actually say anything racist. He's made it abundantly clear. No, he hasn't. His re-election is based on white nationalism. That is absolutely ridiculous. There are a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with our president on. He is not a white nationalist. He runs on nationalism because he believes in our country, he believes in protecting its citizens, and he believes in the Constitution and the rule of law. If you believe in those things, then guess what? You are a nationalist. If you want to equate people with white nationalism, that is bad. That is white supremacy, And I don't know personally any Christian who actually would ever believe that anyway. Continuing with what he said in July, if you support him, there can be no distinction between you being a racist and a racist enabler. They are the same. This guy likes to create division because his arguments are flawed, and therefore he needs to resort to this sort of thing in order to turn people against Trump. It's irresponsible and a bunch of nonsense. And another tweet he wrote on November 29th, 2019. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Now back to impeaching and removing the most criminally corrupt president in U.S. history. Granted, I don't think Trump is the greatest president that we've ever had, but is he the most criminally corrupt president in U.S. history? I think there's some arguments to be had that no, he's really not. There are some things I would like to point out to all of you. But first, since he is attacking the Christian community, I would like to start with this verse. Psalm 140, verses 1 through 3. Rescue me, Lord, from evildoers. Protect me from the violent, who devise evil plans in their hearts and stir up war every day. They make their tongues as sharp as a serpent's. The poison of vipers is on their lips. This pretty much describes politics. This pretty much describes what Rob Reiner is doing right now. His tongue is as sharp as a serpent's. The poison of vipers is on his lips. Why? Because in no such terms, he's trying to categorize a whole group of people, or many of the group of people, as white supremacists and traitors to their country, and none of it is true. And he says these things because he doesn't like our President Trump. It is absolutely ridiculous. It is irresponsible. And as this says here, evil plans in their hearts and stir up war every day. And when you talk like that, that is what you are doing. Is he the only one that is guilty of doing this? Absolutely not. But because he attacked Christian white evangelicals, well, guess what? He is the example I'm using in this video for good reason. Let's start off with some of the more criminally recognizable presidents throughout our history. I'm only going to share with you a few, but these ones will ring true to you. How about this guy? Tricky Dick. Richard Nixon. We all know what he did, right? The Watergate scandal will forever taint Nixon's presidency. It was not the original deed authorizing a break into the Democratic campaign headquarters in the Watergate building during the 1972 presidential race that did it for him, but the lies and the cover-up. You know the situation is serious when you have to appear on TV and declare, "I am not a crook." And after a congressional investigation prompted by groundbreaking investigative journalism from the Washington Post, Nixon became the first president, and so far the only one, to resign from office. I would say that's pretty bad, wouldn't you? The most criminally corrupt president we have right now? Not likely. How about this guy, James Buchanan? He's a treat. A pasty-faced man who liked to be known as the old public functionary, Buchanan, had spent a lifetime in public office before gaining the Democratic nomination in the 1856 election. The key issue in the election was the crisis over the expansion of slavery. It had been rumbling for decades, but had blown up in 1854 when the Democratic-controlled Congress passed a bill that opened up the new territories of Kansas and Nebraska to the possibility of slavery being legalized there. So it's funny how James Buchanan and the Democratic Congress actually opened up Nebraska and Kansas to slavery. Interesting. Despite a 34-year-old agreement regarded by anti-slavery Northerners as a sacred compact that guaranteed the slavery would be excluded. In other words, if we expand You cannot have slaves in any new territories. But the Democratic-controlled Congress passed a bill that said, sure you can. And Buchanan backed it. I don't know. Is he worse than Trump? I'd say so. Continuing with Buchanan, the political fallout of the Kansas-Nebraska Act was so dramatic that it helped to destroy one political party, the Whigs. We always wonder what happened to the Whigs. And created another, the anti-slavery Republican Party. Buchanan was from a free state, Pennsylvania, but had close ties to Southerners. He posed as the man who could heal the wounds and steady the ship of state. In fact, almost every decision he took made things worse. He concluded with the Supreme Court's horrific Dred Scott decision in 1857, which ruled that Congress had no power to exclude slavery from any U.S. territory since it would be tantamount to seizing the legitimate property of slaveholders. He then supported those who wanted to admit Kansas as a slave state, even though the election in the territory that supported slavery was palpably rigged. Wow, this seems like some pretty serious stuff, right, folks? But then you have this worst criminally corrupt president in U.S. history, according to Rob Reiner, doing these sort of things, right? Nah. And the next guy and final guy I'll use as an example who is extremely controversial, Andrew Jackson. You either loved him or you hated him. About Jackson. In office, Jackson was an aggressive wielder of the president's hitherto unused veto power. He stopped Congress from spending money on new roads or canals, and he prevented the recharter of the Bank of the United States, which had attempted to regulate the money supply and served as a lender of last resort. A lot of people love him for doing that. A lot of people hate him for doing that. And whatever political challenge he faced, his language is hyperbolic. You are a den of vipers and thieves, he wrote to the directors of the Bank of the U.S. I intend to rout you out, and by the eternal God, I will rout you out. When he left office, the country was plunged into the deepest recession anyone could remember. Jackson is loved for routing out the national bank because it was destroying the economy and the people. And he is despised by everyone because he moved the Indians all to the west. This guy, in my opinion, is a lot like Trump. But Trump didn't do these things. He didn't push Indians and blacks and Mexicans to the west, did he? He didn't relocate anybody. Jackson was a big offender and arguably a bigger criminal in history for the presidency of the United States. Just as a reminder to all of those who want to knock President Trump, and I am not a great defender of Trump, but I love numbers and statistics, and they do not lie. Unemployment rate in the United States in 2018 by ethnicity. Black or African American, 6.5. The year before Trump was elected, it was 7.6. Puerto Rican, Mexican American, Hispanic, Latino, Cuban, and Asian, all the lowest recorded unemployment since 1972, when we started recording this stuff. If this guy was a racist, guess what? He would not allow this to happen, and he has the power to do it. But he wants everyone to work. This kind of stuff that Rob Reiner is spilling and spewing and attacking Christian evangelicals, specifically white evangelicals, is evil and not justified at all. And he liked to compare us to traitors to our country in a not so roundabout way by saying Christian evangelicals align ourselves with white supremacists, which I just debunked, because Trump is not a white supremacist and he's not a racist. The facts don't back that up. But he also equated us to traitors to our country because we align ourselves with Putin before the United States of America. He's saying this about Christian evangelicals now, specifically white Christian evangelicals. And if not all of them, he's implying many of us are like this. But there's no basis for that. Russia interfered, but Trump had nothing to do with it. The Mueller report finds no evidence of Russian collusion. So that means our president didn't betray the country. It was an investigation that went on for over 2 years, and they're not using it in the current attempt of impeachment. Why? Because there's no evidence for it. But yet the liberals, yet these crazy wackadoos, these God haters, these people who don't like Christians will still try to associate our president with it and people or groups that are aligned with President Trump, even though they don't agree with everything he's done or how he's acted. This is a travesty of words. It is horrible. It is a viper's tongue, and it is wrong. And he's going to make war happen. Maybe not physical war, but he's going to have war of the words, where it's going to destroy people and who they are and what they stand for, because it's misinformation. People always talk about fake news. What Rob Reiner is saying and doing and implying is fake news. It's going to cause a lot of damage in many, many different ways. Let's just read that tweet one more time. Every elected Republican knows that this president is guilty of countless impeachable offenses. But they, along with many white evangelicals and white supremacists, have made a pact with Putin. But unlike a pact with the devil, it's funny how he brings up the devil and he doesn't believe in God, right? This one can be unsigned. Horrible implications, horrible attack on the church and its people, specifically the white evangelical Christians. And one more time, Psalm 140, 1 through 3. And I would caution everyone to be aware of people who do these things. Rescue me, Lord, from evildoers. Protect me from the violent who devise evil plans in their hearts and stir up war every day. When people talk like this, it's war every day. They make their tongues as sharp as a serpent's. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Folks, wake up to this kind of nonsense. I don't care if it's coming from Republicans or Democrats. Now they're attacking Christians publicly because they're deemed to be in association with Trump. Maybe they do vote for Trump, but that's only because he's the lesser of two evils. At least that man stands at this point in time in history pro-life. All right, folks, listen, that's all I have for you today. Be mindful of this kind of talk. Be mindful what it's actually saying and doing to people, and especially the uneducated. It's important that we get the word out there not to listen to this kind of stuff. All right, folks, if you would be so kind, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on that little bell notification so every time I make an upload, you'll see it first. Hit that little drop-down menu in the little bell notification. Hit all so you get the latest information and videos. If you're on BitChute, please subscribe to my BitChute channel. And if you're so inclined, any of you who are listening to this, go over to my BitChute channel, hit that little $sign if you'd like to support the channel and what I do here. It's always greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated. Remember, you can find me on Twitter, Gab, Minds, and Instagram, all under I Am Just a Dude, and the links are down below. All right, folks, listen, that's all I have for you today. Until next time, what do I always say? I say, always, folks, take care and God bless. Bye now.